Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's Rseat is the first time that we get to test out the new Group 4 Bape, and I gotta tell you, it's actually pretty good. Let's get into it. The Anti-Meta car of the week is the Lexus Rseat F once again, but this time in Group 4. The Megane is incredible on the tire wear, on top of extremely nimble, which is perfect for this track, which makes it a really obvious choice as the meta car, but I think people are actually sleeping on the Lexus. So the Megane is actually dominating when it comes to the leaderboard. Most of the cars on the leaderboard are the Megane. However, out of only 6 Rseat Fs on the leaderboard, 3 of them are in the top 10. I'm in the top 20. I think people just don't realize how good this car is. The Megane blows the Lexus out of the water with the tire wear, but the power of the Lexus is a great equalizer. We'll get into that more when it comes to the race itself. I'm pretty proud of this tune. I put it together myself, and even though I'm 3/10 off of the top guys using the same car, I think it is actually capable of the same times in the right hands. Don't forget to screenshot this if you want to keep it handy. About 75% of the way between the second and final board is when you want to hit the brakes. I never really use full brake pressure, not even briefly, and I maintain about 60% brake pressure until I start trail braking in 4th gear. Don't be afraid to use 3rd gear, however. I did find out that that can be quicker. Do make sure that you go up on this curb and be very gentle when you get on the throttle. There's a bit of a crest right after the point where you get on the throttle, so it can make the front end float and it can make you go right off the track. Getting back on the track itself, staying all the way to the left, we're going to look for this red part on the barrier to the left. Right as you pass that, you want to hit the brakes. Brake fully and using a lot of brake pressure as we trail brake in. We're going to get down to 2nd gear and then all the way down to 1st gear as we clip the curb. We want this to be a double apex. I actually missed the 2nd apex. I got on the throttle too roughly as well, and that caused me to wheel spin just a little bit. If I was more patient and hit the 2nd apex, I would have had a much cleaner exit and a faster time. From here, aim for that whiteboard we see directly in front of us. We're not going to be able to straighten out all the way before we hit the next curb, but we want to make it a very wide arc going into it when we hit the brakes. Notice I'm slightly coming off the throttle here. We want to make it gradual as we decelerate. I'm going to straighten out the wheel just a little bit as I downshift to 3rd right when we hit the curb, and then we're going to tighten it in as we trail brake in and try to hit that exit. We need to make sure that this is a gradual and steady corner, because if we're too clumsy here or if we're too abrupt, it can really easily send the car into oversteer. Use all of this exit curbing, and you can actually put only your left tires up on the green part, but I don't advise going in the grass. It'll just slow you down. Keep in mind where the board is. That's a good braking marker, but I like to use this brown part of the edge of the track as a more precise braking marker. Braking just shy of 100%, at the beginning of the red and white curb, I'm going to start turning in and downshift to 3rd gear. As I get closer to the apex, I'm going to downshift to 2nd gear to really nail the late apex, then back up to 3rd gear and gently on the throttle to make sure we don't get any oversteer. There is some extra curbing runoff beyond the red and white curbing, but it's pretty dangerous to use. Make sure you don't try to rely on it because it's really easy just to slip on the grass after it. The gearing for this car is really unfortunate because if you stay in 5th gear, you're going to hit the rev limiter before you need to hit the brakes, so I actually shift up to 6th early. When you see the red mark on the barrier to the right, once you get all the way past that is when I like to brake. Turning in at that last white board on the left, we downshift to 5th gear, hold steady brake pressure, and then I like to come entirely off the brakes, downshift to 4th, and get back on the throttle. As you can see, I did it a little bit early, so I had to come off the throttle briefly, but that's very close to an optimal way to take that. Once again, the boards are a good reference, but using the red part of the barrier on the left, that is when I like to brake. Downshift to 4th and carefully trail brake in. Try not to bleed off too much speed. You just want to make sure that you can hit this curb at the perfect angle so you can get back on the throttle gently as you get on top of it and track all the way out to this extra runoff on top of the curb. Be careful if you use too much of that inside curbing. It can make your car fly around in really weird directions, so you don't have to use all of it, but maximizing your speed, you do want to use all of it. Making sure you take into account how much your car is going to understeer when you initially hit the brakes. We're going to hit the brakes right at this white marker on the right. The trick here is to use light pressure for an extended period of time, making sure that you downshift to 4th and just try to barely graze this curb. Use as much of this curb as you possibly can. Continue steering right and gently get on the throttle, making sure you don't go on the grass. And if you do go on the grass, straighten the wheel out before you try to turn back onto the pavement. Get yourself to the right as soon as you possibly can and try to line yourself up on the right side of the track. Right before this whiteboard, we're going to downshift to 3rd, hit the brakes, and we're going to trail brake just until we get to the point where we can let off the brakes entirely and go straight over this curb. You want to use as much of this curb as you possibly can. If you're carrying too much speed, 2nd gear can help you rotate in, but I've found that it makes you lose too much speed, so I like to stay in 3rd gear. If you can hit it just right in 3rd gear, you're going to be going a lot faster than if you had to use 2nd gear. The final corner is a wild one, so you've got to be really careful on this one. Using the final board on the left, we're going to brake right before it, downshift to 4th, turn in, and then downshift to 3rd before you hit the apex. That'll get the car to rotate just enough so you can get back on the throttle before the track dips down again, which feels scary because your car's going to understeer, but you've got to track all the way out to this exit, and that's why this extra runoff is put there, because so many people go off there. You got to be real careful here, but it's also important to be really brave there. For the best possible qualifying time, move yourself all the way to the right. I was going to do another lap after this, but that's not the fast way to do it. So for the first corner, a lot of people brake either too much or not enough, which results in a lot of people going off. What you've got to make sure you do is keep enough brake pressure to keep enough weight over the front tires. If you come off too quickly or too soon, your car's going to understeer. And of course, if you brake too much, you're just going to oversteer off the track. A lot of people also touch the grass here. You got to do everything you can to avoid the grass. Just try to decelerate gradually. If you stomp on the brakes there, because it's downhill and it's kind of weird, it can really easily make you spin out. This corner has kind of a fake sector split. It's right in the middle, and so if you hit it just right, it might say you're actually going slower than your best lap. Wait until this next sector split to determine if you're actually doing better or not. And of course, sacrifice the entry for the exit if you have to sacrifice one or the other. These two right-hand corners, it's very important to keep all of your momentum up. Keep as much momentum as you can, so brake as little as possible while of course staying on track. The biggest issue I see with this extremely fast right-hander is people actually brake too early and then try to get on the throttle. They either have to come off the throttle or they just go directly off the track. So be really brave on braking and it will reward you with a better exit. Like I mentioned in the breakdown, this final corner is kind of weird how it kind of rises and dips just as you need to get on the throttle, and you might want to wait until it dips to get back on the throttle, but if you do, you're costing yourself some time, so you just have to be really brave and really patient. Also, if you've nailed your lap, stay all the way to the right for those extra hundredths. I was actually so confident that this was going to be the anti-meta car that I set a lap with it last night, and the very first race of the day, I used it and I won. After successfully testing a bunch of other cars and getting another win, I decided to come back to this car to see if I could go even faster, and this is the result. I did end up going even faster, though I didn't quite hit my lap time goal, which I will be focusing on the rest of the week. For the race strategy itself, it's that same old strategy where you've got to just take a pit whenever you think you can come out without having any kind of traffic, and if you're starting from the back or towards the middle, it's probably going to be on the very first lap. This, of course, all hinges on your ability to save tires, and this car is not super nice on the tires. However, if you drive smoothly, anyone can be good at tire saving. If you find yourself completely unable to save tires for the entire race, do not worry. There are still options where you can use strategy to your advantage. One thing I don't talk about very frequently is the pit window, because usually we don't really have to think about that kind of thing, but the tire wear is high enough that some of you might actually struggle to make it the entire race on these tires, though I don't think you will. If you do find yourself struggling with the tires, I want you to consider that there are a number of laps where it will work in your favor to take tires when you do go in the pits. Now, instead of thinking that you're going to pit on lap 5 or lap 6 every single race, consider the fact that you could pit anywhere between lap 4 and lap 7 and still probably make it so you're not suffering too much on the bad tires. Keeping in mind that you have a pit window, if you approach lap 4 or the end of lap 4 and there are a lot of people going in the pits directly in front of you, then you know you're going to have the opportunity to then pit after that. The thing is, if they're taking tires and they're going in on lap 4, but they're all fighting each other, you're going to have clean air despite the fact that they're going to have better tires on their outlap. So, an overcut rather than an undercut strategy might work on those people. The name of the game really is flexibility and knowing that you do have options. My option usually is just to pit immediately. So if I do see someone going right in front of me and I'm not too certain I'm going to run into the people that are directly after them, I might wait till lap 2. That's actually what happened here, and it wasn't just because of the people going in the pits, it's because I was passing a guy on the outside and I didn't want to wait around because that would cost precious time. Since I couldn't go in the pits safely right there, I just chose to go in on lap 2. Jumping forward, the pit entrance is actually really tricky here, so I wanted to just show you how I do it. It's also important if there are people behind you that you stay really close to the inside and signal if you can, because it is really wild how many people will just take the wide line and then pull into the pits, and you can just run into them. It happened to me multiple times today. As you can see, the pit is extremely fast if you don't take tires, and like I've been saying, you really do not need to take tires. I think most of you are going to be able to figure this out without having to take tires. And because of that, we actually find ourselves in the perfect position. It's lap 3, and there's absolutely no one in front of us except for Outlaw, who's a buddy of ours, and he's 3.5 seconds ahead. At the beginning of lap 4, we did encounter someone coming out of the pit, someone who had started close to the front, or actually maybe even all the way in the front. This is a guy that I had battled earlier on in the day for the other victory that I had with this car. So we have history, he's a really good driver, he's a clean guy, he's quick, and so this is actually a really good situation. When you have another quick driver, someone that you trust, if you do end up getting in a battle, you know you can trust them not to slow you down too much, and if they're quick, then obviously being behind them isn't going to mean that you're going to be stuck. We know the Megane handles really well, but the Lexus is super powerful, so if you can get really close and get a better exit than someone in it, then you're going to be able to get all the way up next to him. Now, this wasn't a good opportunity to show how you can pass on the outside, because most people will make you pass on the outside there. It is possible, but you also have to trust the people. But when you race people that you trust, a lot of times they're just going to let you on the inside if they know that you're not going to slow them down. The strategy he might be trying to employ here is knowing that my tires are going to be terrible by the end of the race compared to his, and so if he can just stick close to me, he can use my slipstream to maintain a good pace until my tires fall off, and then he'd be able to pass me. Our buddy Shadow Realm was luckily far enough ahead of us, but this actually illustrates the dangers of this pit entrance. He was a half second ahead, but because he took the wide line and slowed down that much, I almost ran directly into him. So be very wary of people who might be trying to go in the pits, and always be prepared to go on the outside of someone when you are negotiating corner right behind them on that corner specifically. With that, we don't even encounter anyone else for 2 more laps, and when we do, it's our buddy King Ghidorah. I also want to take a moment to shout out Mr. Plaka Plum. King Ghidorah in front of us. He streams here on YouTube and makes videos. He's known as Plaka Plum, like I just said. He's always driving the Mustang or the Ford GT, and he's very good with both. He's a very clean driver, very respectful driver, so if you see him on track, you know that you can trust him on the outside. I love you, buddy. But once again, I digress. The strategy is working so well that this actually ends up being mostly a boring race. As luck would have it, we have clean air for 2 more laps, and then the first person we encounter is another driver that we trust. I talk pretty frequently about how a strategy when it comes to these races is just knowing your opponents, and knowing who's going to be aggressive, who's going to be clean, all that kind of stuff. I knew that Blaze was going to be clean, and if I had a clean run, he wasn't going to fight too hard to try to defend it. He'd battle, of course, if he thought he had a chance, but if it looked like a really clean run, he wasn't going to slow both of us down. So what I planned on doing was just sticking behind him, and for some reason, I thought he was going to go in the pits now. He had no reason to. He was waiting until the second to last lap, and so that was just my mistake not trying to be more aggressive and making a move. So as soon as I had a really clean opportunity to not mess up the pace of either of us, I went for my pass right here. I feel like I had a lot of luck just racing people that I explicitly trust, or people that I didn't really know. I actually passed 2 people on the outside today who I didn't know, and I had really good luck with it. That usually doesn't happen in these lobbies, so it was just a good day in general. So as you can see, the best thing to do, like always with these kind of races, is take your 1 mandatory pit whenever you can come out without having any kind of traffic, if you can control that kind of thing, and then of course just focus on your own pace. The best way to focus on your own pace is to make sure that you spend enough time in the time trial to get your lap down and you're aware of what the car is going to do as the tire wear sets in. Spending a lot of time in the time trial is beneficial for a number of reasons. 1, obviously, you're going to set a better time, so you're going to have a better starting position. But 2, it's going to help you really learn the combination. So when you do find yourself on track in the race, you don't really have to focus on much else than hitting your lines, hitting your braking points, your turn-in points, and that kind of stuff. Things will change as the tire wear sets in, but it's usually not drastic and it's not sudden. Learning how to adapt to that is key to having really good pace in these races. As always, thank you very much for watching my video. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as promised, I'm going to be moving permanently over to streaming on Wednesdays here at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Don't miss it. Thank you.